Hello everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Ilk Shed for a weekly album review, and we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. You can also reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me an email. My address is dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anybody with a story to share, anyone with MP3s, do get in touch. So this week we're going to be chatting to local photographer Jasper Thomsen, but before we do that we're going to have the latest instalment of Formerly, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network by myself, Dane Cobain. This is for the Rhylight Zone. We've been serialising it over the past few weeks. You can catch up on the on-demand on iTunes, Spotify, etc. if you missed an episode, or it's available in ebook, paperback and audiobook format. So the latest part of Formerly, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network.
Chapter 10. For a while my life seemed to settle down. Work was busy but bearable, money was scarce but sufficient, and Sarah and I had made up, broken up, and made up again. I'd even gone for dinner with her and her parents, even though I hate them. They're too conservative, and they think that she's wasting her time with the next web. They say that she's not a real journalist until her work appears in print. The fools can't see that the printed word is as old and as frail as they are. As for me, I was proud of her in a way. But mainly I didn't give a damn about her job as long as it kept her busy. If she was busy, she wouldn't have the time to nag me about the hours I put in at Formerly. As the weather grew warmer and we slowly left the winter behind, Formerly released its advertisements to general indifference. Big brands stuck with Google, Facebook and other more mainstream options. Part of that is down to the nature of the site, Flick explained. People don't want to associate their brand with death. Local businesses, meanwhile, loved it. We got a lot of business from funeral homes and florists, as well as from restaurants, mum and pop stores, and even from some of the more entrepreneurial franchises that ignored corporate guidelines and decided to try something new. Our users barely noticed the addition of the adverts, although the media claimed that they were leaving in droves. The truth is, they had no idea about what was going on at the company, and formally lied to everyone. On our end, we knew that we were growing faster than ever before, and existing users were logging in more often and for longer. In fact, we were doing just fine. But it couldn't hurt if people thought we were struggling. It gave us the element of surprise whenever we decided to prove them wrong. But we still weren't profitable, at least not yet. We were taking in money, but it wasn't enough to cover the servers and our overheads. The investors were still funding our salaries and barely 5% of our ad slots were being filled. The click-through rate was pretty good and most of our customers were happy with the results, but it wasn't exactly perfect. We didn't have much time to work on updates though. We were already rolling out new features at a blistering speed. We'd released an iPhone app after working with developers from a specialist agency, but that wasn't enough. Peter had taken on the challenge of recruitment, and we planned to build an in-house team to work on smartphone and tablet applications for iOS and Android. We hadn't made a hire yet, but we were close. Mobile isn't the future, Peter told us, but it is the past and the present, and it's here to stay. We're going to work on an SMS-based service too. Then we launch in India. Abby's already translated all of the language packs. The developer nodded his acknowledgement, but I caught a stirring of resentment in his movements. He'd been acting strangely of late, and I think I knew why. He was worried about the future. So was I, come to think of it. As March gave way to April, the servers went down again. Luckily, we'd upgraded our infrastructure and so only the US was affected. I say only. John was absolutely furious. "What the hell, Pete?" he demanded, glaring at him over the top of a computer screen. John had only just found out about the outage because he'd been out of office in a meeting. Peter, for his part, had stopped by on his way to the airport. "Why are our servers down again? Do you want us to lose our users?" "I'm on it, John. Calm down, these things happen. We're growing too quickly to be invincible, and there's good news too. It's not a denial of service attack if that's what you think. We were already close to capacity and then some articles went up that pushed us over the edge." "Don't worry, boss," said Flick. "I'll get right on it. We need to keep the lines of communication open so that people know what's going on. I reckon we can control the fallout, but only if we act now." "So what are you waiting for? Get on it. You should be doing this already. The rest of you get back to work. You don't get paid to sit around all day. Except for you, Elaine. You come with me." That night, we foiled another break-in. Neil suspected one of his men of taking a bribe and launched a review of personnel. Nothing was taken and no damage was done, but the whole place was turned over in the middle of the night. One of the guards was knocked unconscious, and another was found bound and gagged in the alley outside. Peter was furious because we had no way of knowing whether our data had been compromised. We didn't think so, but how could we be sure? Niels' CCTV cameras caught 4 figures dressed from head to toe in black, like the guy from The Princess Bride. They rushed in, overpowered the 2 guards and sprayed paint over the cameras. That's the last we saw of them, which gave them around 2 hours in the office before the cleaners disturbed them. My men saw nothing, said Niels, addressing us in our temporary war room. But I don't know if I can trust them. Either way, don't worry, I'm looking into it. Worry, laughed Flick. 2 of your men could have been killed, and you think it might have been an inside job. For all we know, the people we're trusting to protect us are being paid by someone else to try to kill us. Yeah, I agreed. And why are we even paying you in the first place? What's the point in having security guards if they're going to get themselves knocked out at the first sign of trouble? And where were you, Dan? Niels snapped. They're brave lads, whether you trust them or not. I'll do some digging because you can never be too careful, but my priority is to find out how they got into the building in the first place. I'll step up security too. I wonder, John murmured. The conversation had descended into chaos, and I was the only one who seemed to hear him. Perhaps there's another solution. The atmosphere in the office continued to darken over the next couple of days, and even a long weekend away on the coast wasn't enough to lift my spirits. That was part of Sarah's attempt to resurrect our relationship, to breathe a little life into something that neither of us really believed in. Oh sure, we got drunk together, and we wandered hand in hand along the seafront, but we were hiding a secret sadness from the world. By the time I returned to the office, tensions were at breaking point. Peter was back from the States and in a foul mood, and John was acting like a man possessed. He had something up his sleeve, and we all knew it. He was bouncing around like Kerry after 7 cups of coffee at a hackathon. While Peter locked himself away in the boardroom, John ordered pizza and cracked open a case of beer, which got demolished in less than an hour. "What's going on?" asked Abby, lending his voice to the question on everybody's minds. John wrapped an arm around his shoulders and steered him randomly around as he paced the office. "What's going on, Abby? I'll tell you, shall I?" He paused for a second to crack open another beer before continuing. "We've got some big news, bigger than anything that's ever happened to us before." "Yes, sir," Abby replied. "But you haven't actually said—" "Don't break my stride," John scowled, holding his hand up for silence. "Where was I? Ah, yes, we're having a team meeting in 5 minutes, and I want all of you in it. Finish up whatever you're doing and follow me into the boardroom. Leave your phones, your tablets, and your laptops behind. You won't need them. You won't even need a pen and paper. This is important. I want no distractions."
That was the latest instalment of formerly The Rise and Fall of a Social Network by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Jazz Dillon with Thunder.
Tell me how you know. getting colder, cold enough to see your breath as you shiver under shelter with nowhere to go. Cover up the scars on her body, feverish and sick she cries. Nobody really cares for her. May mother help you, so dance with me into the apocalypse. As the world drowns around us, so dance with disaster. So dance with me into the apocalypse. As the world drowns around us, so dance with disaster. Nasty way with words, a vile and bitter tongue, lashing out obscenity and cursing your children. The body heats up further, she suffocates from the smog, her lungs are ablaze with vengeance. The end is nice, so dance with me into the apocalypse. As the world drowns around us, so dance with disaster. So dance with me into the apocalypse. As the world drowns around us, so dance with disaster. She offers is swiftly taken, and nothing given is ever returned. No favor to our mother or our kin, and we piss on our porch. So dance with me into the apocalypse. As the world drowns around us, so dance with disaster. So dance with me into the apocalypse. As the world drowns around us, so dance with disaster.
That was Slow Dance by Jake Cooper of the Phenomenauts, and before that we had Thunder by Jazz Dillon. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined by this week's guest, who is local photographer Jasper Thomsen. The first question is one I ask everybody. Whether or not you'll have an answer, I don't know. I never know if people are going to. But it was, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
Oh my goodness. I gotta be honest, I haven't read many books in a very long time, which I hate myself for it, because I used to read so much and I have so many books on my bookshelf, or many, but I've got a handful of books on my bookshelf that I need to read. One of them being Will Smith's book that he released last year, like his autobiography or whatnot. But I haven't even opened it yet.
Yeah. I remember seeing that come out because I follow him on YouTube, but it's kind of weird now because since the whole Oscars slap thing or whatever, it's like, well, I don't really know now, and it's like, you know, I don't know. It'd be weird to read the book then, I think, and being like, well, now and like the guy who wrote this, he didn't know this was going to happen, and so it could add an interesting thing to it. Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
So
but I was actually on the book release. Like he had like a little book tour, like a
yeah,
release thing,
yeah.
and one of the dates was in London, and I was there.
Ah,
So I saw him live. Like so he was reading from the book. It was him and Idris Elba.
yeah.
I was like sort of reading from the book and discussing different things and whatever. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Funny enough, I saw the other day, total tangent here, but so Michelle Obama's got a new book coming out.
Oh
And
yeah.
she's doing a similar thing, a tour with that, but it's being moderated by Oprah. And I was looking at that and I was like, that'd be so cool to go and see like
Yeah.
Oprah and Michelle Obama have a little
Oh
chat. Like,
yes.
I'll just sit there and listen. It'd be great, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so obviously I want to talk to you mostly about your photography. We've got a few different things to cover. But in terms of your photography, how long have you been, pursuing photography, and how did you get your start?
So I think I got my first camera when I was like 15,
Mm-hmm.
which was just like one of those like point and shoot or whatever, but it did come with me like literally everywhere. And I still have a whole bunch of my photos since then, obviously, because it's all digital. Unfortunately, it got stolen when I was at a nightclub. Like I checked it in with my jacket, and someone in the wardrobe, they took it.
Yeah.
Then it was a couple of years, I think, before I got another one, but then I got a DSLR. I got a Nikon
Yeah.
D60 or something. But yeah, no, so it's been going on for more than half my life. I mean, I'm 34 now, so
Awesome.
yeah. And it's mostly been, I mean, to start off, it was mostly just taking photos with my friends and doing like artistic things. But then my big brother, he was always in bands.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take photos of him playing, and then kind of like the setup that you've got at Wickham Art Center, you've got 3 bands playing, right? So like
Yeah.
I would come for his band, and then I would take photos of all the others and just approach them afterwards and go like, hey,
Yeah.
I've got photos of you. You can have these for free. And if you want to, if you like it, then you can, contact me and we can sort something out.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cover that in a little bit as well. But so you mentioned the camera that you got, and one of the questions I wanted to ask is like, what gear do you have? What do you use in terms of, I guess, both hardware and like any software that you use?
Yeah. So now I've got a Canon ATD. Yes, a Canon ATD. The main lens that I use is a Sigma 30mm. Just a basic lens, mainly because it lets in so much light if I need it. And then I've got a Canon zoom lens as well, just a basic 70 to 300, which I use when I just want a little bit more depth. Those are really the main things that I use. I do have a couple of other small lenses, but I've not used them in a very long time, and I just it's kind of getting to the point where should I really keep hold of them? Like they're just taking up space and weight in my bag. But I'm one of those people that I'll come in handy someday.
Yeah. You never know, do you? And it's better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them.
Exactly. And then I've got a tripod that I use every once in a while, and a flash that I do need to learn more how to use, like, because I know how to use it, but it's like every time I do take it out, it's sort of a learning process every time, so I just end up not using it. And software wise, it's literally just Lightroom at this point in time. So it's I just tune up any the lights and the darks and color balances and things like that is mostly what I tend to do.
Awesome, cool. And I'm right in thinking you're currently studying photography, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So last year in September, I started a postgraduate course or a postgraduate diploma in photography with the British Academy of Photography. Sounds really posh. Really isn't. The first year, or between the starting in September until May this year, we would meet up every other Saturday in London, with I think it was every third lesson we were in a studio. So they don't have a campus or anything. They just hire out studios and other places, like conference centers and things like that, like to have your classes. But yeah, so like every third lesson we would be in the studio to learn more about studio equipment and how to do more like portraits and food and product photography and things like that. And then the other times it would be a bit more theoretical and more talking at a conference center, basically more practical or more theoretical lessons. I now have about 2 years left to complete all of my assignments. Now I am a major procrastinator. So I haven't really done much of them yet. So there's 15 units with two assignments in each, where you then obviously you get judged on that. And then once those are completed, I then graduate, and you get a work experience at the end of it as well. So you get a 4-week placement with a major studio in London, or I think they have contacts a little bit all over the country or all over the UK, where you can go.
Awesome. Yeah. And that must have been interesting for you, because again, you mentioned, and like this is what I associate you mostly with, is like the music photography. So I guess it's been interesting for you to do things like you say, like food photography and product photography, and to kind of go into a different type of photography.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because obviously with the music photography, you mainly work with, it's a constantly moving scenery, and you work with the light that is already there, which is also constantly changing. Whereas in the studio, you then suddenly have to control all the lighting yourself. And I find that quite hard, like, because it's more when you're doing music photography or wildlife photography, because that's another thing that I do for myself, is that if the picture, like if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, well, because it changes, you don't have control over the complete settings. But when you're in the studio, well, then it's down to you, because you control every element of it. Like you set everything up, like in terms of the subject itself and the lighting and everything else. So I find it quite scary, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
To do it, but I definitely want to learn more. So I think that's the biggest carrot for me is at the end, is that I get this placement in it with the studio at the end.
And have you ever done like a photo shoot for a band, or have you only kind of shot concerts? Because I imagine that if you were to do a photo shoot, that would be very similar, because then you can control the lighting in the background, and you can tell them, okay, well, we're going to take that one again or whatever. Whereas, as you say, with a live concert, you're kind of documenting it as it happens.
Yeah, that's it. It's mostly been just sort of documenting as things happen. I did do with an ex-partner with the band that he was in, I did do a couple of photo shoots with them, but that was all out in natural lighting. We didn't have any external lights at all. It did turn out quite well, because it was a nice sunny day and whatever. We were out, I think, in Westcott, the abandoned airstrip out there, where they now have the business stuff, which was really cool. But it was more the creative side of it was more from the band than it was from me. Really, I was more there just to take the pictures, to be honest. So I haven't done a proper photo shoot where I've been planning more and been more in charge, so to speak.
Awesome, cool. And you've kind of become like the resident photographer, I would say, for Tony Goff and the Broken Colours. And I wonder what's it like to work with those guys, and what are some of the shots that you've taken, of them?
It's amazing. But I mean, Tony is the hype guy for everyone, for everyone that he works with, and maybe not so much for himself always, but like we like reflect the hype back on him. But it's been incredible. I mean, it's been now almost a year, well, 10 months, I would say, because I think it was December last year when I first met up with them. Because I was at the Wickham Art Centre, so that would have been the same time when we met as well. And it's been really good. I mean, I've been doing a lot of a few gigs in London, a few other like acoustic gigs and stuff like that. And there was, in the summer, they played a couple of festivals, and I can't remember now the name of the one festival that I actually went with them, but the headliner was I think Boney M was the headliner for the festival, and like their tent was there because their tent like backstage was literally opposite Boney M. Unfortunately, they weren't there at the time, but it was really cool to see them on a really big stage, like a proper stage. And it was pretty cool for me as well because I got to be there like in the pit. Like between the stage and the audience, which was really nice.
You're listening to the Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with local photographer Jasper Thomsen, and this is Without My Addiction with In the Name of Progress. That was In the Name of Progress by Without My Addiction. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be rejoined by this week's guest, who is local photographer Jasper Thomsen. And I think Tony Goff, didn't they play with Twin Dive as well? And I wanted to ask you, who are Twin Dive and why should people listen to them?
So Twin Dive is a band from Denmark. They are based out of Aarhus in Denmark, which is funnily enough, because I'm half Danish, and it's funnily enough, I've got a lot of family around that sort of area of Denmark. So I kind of connected with those guys as well when they were over. And they so as far as I understood it, it was the singer Robert that's friends with Tony since a few years back when he was playing in a different band, and they've like toured together before. And yeah, I mean, they were absolutely amazing. I hadn't heard any of their music before the actual gig because I was like, oh, you know what, it's going to be good music because they're playing, like, because Tony is playing with them. It's going to be good music, so I'll just wait and see what it is. And it was definitely, it was a surprise what it was, because I mean, it is sort of punk-ish. But I would definitely recommend going to listen to them on Spotify because they've only just released their debut album, Lavish Materials. And when I went home to Sweden a month ago, that album was pretty much, it was my anthem for the, like, it was the soundtrack to my whole trip. It's just really, really, really good. Robert also has a solo act called Benedict J that he does, which is more acoustic and just just a bit softer.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, no, they should definitely check them out.
Awesome. And so you mentioned, so it's because I wanted to ask you about your heritage and what you're most proud of. So are you half Danish, half Swedish? Is that how it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Right. So I'm grown up born and bred in Malmo in Sweden. So that's in the very south. And then my dad's Danish. And I've got a lot of family in North Jutland. And I mean, I suppose I'm proud of both sides. I would say, but I have more connection to Sweden, obviously, because that's where my closest family is. I've got a lot of cousins, a couple of half siblings in Denmark as well, and nieces and nephews and whatnot. But I don't see them very often, unfortunately. But yeah, I go over a couple of times a year usually to Sweden to see my mom and dad. My big brother still lives in Sweden as well, quite close to my parents. Then my little brother moved to Finland quite a few years ago, and he's got a wife and 2 kids over there. So we're all sort of spread out.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. And so obviously one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is about trans and trans rights. I wondered if you could share your story to date, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am trans, or I see myself as non-binary trans masculine, but I tend to, when I just talk to people, well, I'm a trans guy, basically. Yeah. It's about just over 2.5 years since I came out. I've always sort of known that something wasn't right, but I've been lucky in the sense where I haven't had that major dysphoria and the major feeling of that, oh my God, I can't live another day in this body because this isn't right, which I suppose is also a reason why it took me so long to fully realize that it was a thing.
Yeah.
It was actually during the first lockdown during COVID where I sort of realized, because I just as most of the rest of the people in the world and in the UK got put on, it wasn't working, and I figured, I need something new to doom scroll on my phone, so I joined TikTok, which I hadn't done before, and quite quickly ended up on the queer side of TikTok, basically. And just started following and started seeing all these people on the non-binary spectrum, more than the binary trans man, trans women. And when they were talking about their stories, I was like, oh my God, have you been in my head? And just sort of pulled all my memories and all my thoughts from being a child, or at least a young teenager, and that's basically what I just realized, that, oh my God, this is actually a thing that's valid and it's real, and I'm not alone in this. And I'm lucky that I have all the support from my family and friends, all the love and support. I am also very lucky in the fact that I've had money to go private, because the NHS, unfortunately, the waiting times are years. I'd be probably in my 40s, in my early 40s, until I get seen, unless there is a major revamp and major injection of funds and things like that to the trans care. So I have been able to go private and started testosterone in July, and I am now literally 4 weeks and 2 days post-op top
Yeah.
surgery as well. Which is why I went over to Sweden, because it's also it's cheaper to get top surgery in Sweden. So I flew over and I spent some time with my parents there and had it done.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And one of the questions I wanted to ask was like, you know, how are you healing up? But also, we also mentioned before we got on the call as well that you've had an ear infection as well. So how are you healing? How are you healing up from both?
So top surgery going amazingly. It is, I mean, I haven't had any pain whatsoever.
Nice, yeah.
And even after the surgery itself, like the first week, I mean, all the painkillers that I was on was literally just paracetamol.
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
yeah, so it was like a gram of paracetamol 3 times a day, and then there was another anti-inflammatory, but you know, it wasn't anything heavy.
Yeah.
And now I don't take anything now. There's no pain whatsoever. It's a little bit tight, you know, there's a lot of scar tissue obviously, but that's expected, completely expected. It's going to be up to 3 months until I'm completely fully ready to like if it like, because I want to go to the gym and stuff, and
Yeah.
it will be about so it will be another 2 months until I can do like chest exercises and
Yeah.
upper body exercises. But otherwise it's going, yeah, it's going perfectly fine. The ear infection, I gotta be honest, that was more painful and more annoying
Yeah.
than the top surgery. It was developing over like was it like 3 or 4 days, and it was so painful I couldn't even sleep.
Yeah.
Now there's no pain. Obviously I went to the GP and whatever, I got a spray, or just a little spray to put in there, and it's not painful anymore, but I still can't hear properly. I did, however, it appears that I can still sing without it. So I do a lot of karaoke and stuff with my friends, and on what was it, on Sunday I was like, oh, you know what, I'm here, I'm at karaoke, I can't just sit and listen to everyone because I want to sing too. So I
Yeah.
tried it and it worked fine. So
Awesome.
so yeah, so no major no major damage there.
And it's funny because I was going to ask you, well, my question as I've written it down is, are you musical at all yourself? And what's your go-to shower song? So I guess that becomes, what's your go-to karaoke song?
So my go-to karaoke song, I've got 2 at the moment. The first one is I See Fire by Ed Sheeran, because that was the very first song that I ever sang at open mic night, like 7 years ago in Aylesbury when I first came here. And then so that one I do if I'm in a mellow mood. And then if I wanna do some more shouting and whatever, I do Zombie by the Cranberries.
Nice, good choice.
Yeah.
Awesome, cool. Okay, well, just a couple more questions that I want to ask, and one of them I think you've kind of answered, but I wondered, like, how do you consider photography? Is it a medium in which you create new things, or is it more about documenting what's already there? Or I guess, does it depend upon the photographer?
I would say it definitely depends on the photographer. I mean, for me, it's most of my journey has been documenting what's there. Whether it's people, whether it's animals, or whether it's just, you know, scenery, or like I have like, especially now during autumn, during fall, when all the leaves are starting to fall and all the colors are changing, I get a bit obsessed and caught up by all the leaves, not on the trees, well, sometimes on the trees, but a lot of the time on the floor where they land, and I don't even move them, like I just, oh wow, like this is a beautiful pattern, or these are beautiful colors or whatever, and I just stoop down and I just take a picture of a leaf on the ground. But I mean, other people who create a little bit more, you know what, actually going back to Twin Dive and their album that they released, the artwork on their album is incredible. It is so beautiful, and if you check them out on their social media, just search for Twin Dive Band. you'll see some outtakes and some other, some of the trial and errors, but it is absolutely beautiful, their artwork. And that's definitely a more creative thing rather than just documenting.
Awesome, cool. And pretty much just to finish on, what's next for you? I suppose you've got your degree to finish up, and where can people follow you to find out more?
So I am on Instagram and I am on Facebook. So Facebook is Jasper Linnaeus Photography, and Instagram is jasper.l.photo, I think.
They'll find you.
Yeah. If there is a way of putting the links in the description or something, I think it's easier, because I gotta say, I haven't been too active on my photography socials lately, but I am trying to pick that up more, to get a little bit more traction, because the whole idea with getting some academics behind my general play around with the camera was also to be able to make some money from it at some point in time, which means that I have to pick up the pace with the socials as well. So
awesome, cool. And what have you got coming up? Have you got any gigs like lined up or anything like that, or are you just taking it as it comes?
So there is one with Tony Goff and the Broken Palace. They're playing the end of the month, I think, at Camden Rocks Festival. So at Fiddler's Elbow they will be headlining. So I think it's the 22nd of October, so next weekend,
something like that.
So they'll be headlining at Fiddler's Elbow for Camden Rocks. Then so that will be the next one for me.
Big thank you to Jasper Thomsen for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound, and this is My Girl by Straight 8.
I've got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I got the month of May. I guess you say, what can make me feel this way, my girl? I'm talking about my girl. I've got so much honey, the bees in the bee. I've got a sweeter song that I can sing than the birds in the tree. Well, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way, my girl? I'm talking about my girl. Ooh. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. I don't need no money for no thing. I got all the riches, baby, one man can claim. Well, I guess you say, what can make me feel this way, my girl? I'm talking about my girl, my girl. I'm talking about my girl, my girl. I'm talking about my girl.
Turning Point by Jessica Williamson, and before that we had Straight 8 with their version of My Girl. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it is time for us to head over to the Ilk Shed for this week's album review, courtesy of Twangling Jack Ford.
The Fun-Loving Criminals, Bag of Hits. The Fun-Loving Criminals were quite big in the late 90s. They were a guitar, bass and drums trio from New York City. As musicians, they could lay down perfectly performed hip-hop, funk, smooth jazz and hard rock backing tracks. The backing tracks have the clean production sound you might expect from a band like Steely Dan. However, they are mostly known as a white rap group. The reason I like them is because there is a degree of humour to their lyrics and the subject matter. The songs have the structure of rapped verses with sung choruses. There are some samples, most famously on their best-known song Scooby Snacks. Quentin Tarantino is credited as a writer on Scooby Snacks because of all the samples they used from his films. My favourite track is Big Night Out. The rhythm track is actually a sample and the whole track sounds more like authentic hip-hop with all the hiss and crackles. The main sample is from a very well-known rock song which drove me mad, and I spent ages running it through my head, hoping I would find the next line. It turned out to be one of my all-time favourite songs, Tom Petty's American Girl. The second half of Big Night Out is a very un-hip-hop country gospel chord progression with the puzzling lyric, "Can't you see I've got a supermodel on my D?" I would also recommend the much rockier song Korean Bodega. There are some straight, not rapped cover songs like Couldn't Get It Right and a very charming version of All the Time in the World. The great thing about the singer and rapper Huey Morgan is that his enunciation is such that you can make out every word. And also I get all the cultural references. Huey Morgan is now a DJ on Six Music. Fun-Loving Criminals, Bag of Hits.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Jasper Thomsen for being my guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, if you miss an episode, you can catch up with us. We're on iTunes, Spotify, we're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, and we're repeated on Monday nights on Wickham Sound. We have a Facebook page. You can find us if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound. You should be able to find us. And you can email me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So that's it for another show. Thanks so much for listening. I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Kick Off with Let's Not Be Naked. I'll chat to you next week.
All thoughts and rapture steal the essence of your fall. Happy ever after in your dreams of this, I'm sure. Don't think you're naked now, or naked anymore. Don't think he'll make it now, oh this I'm never sure. What will the neighbors say when you can't keep up with Jones? What will your thoughts now say essence of my fall.